Princess Nobody. Once upon a time, when fairies were much more common than they are today, there lived a king and queen. Their palace was close to fairyland, and often the elves would cross over the border and come into the king's orchards and gardens. They would climb the hedges and tease the butterflies, while the fairies would loll on the leaves and drink little drops of dew that fell from the petals. The king and queen were very rich and very fond of each other, but they had no child to take the throne when they were gone. Often the queen said that she wished she had a child, even if it were no bigger than her thumb. But the fairies never heard her, so they never helped her. Then, one day, when the king was out in his garden, he took off his crown, looked around his kingdom, and said with a sigh, "Ah, I would give it all for a baby." No sooner had the king spoken than a little dwarf hopped up on a frog. He had a droopy red hat, a red cloak, and a big moustache. The dwarf tapped him on the leg. "You shall have a beautiful baby," said the dwarf, "if you give me what I ask." "I will give you anything you like," replied the king. "Then promise to give me niente," said the dwarf. "Certainly," said the king, who had no idea what niente meant. How shall I give it to you?" "I will take it in my own way, on my own day," snapped the dwarf, and with that he climbed onto his frog, which cleared the garden path with one bound, and was soon lost among the flowers. Soon after that, a war broke out between the giants and the ghouls, and the king set out to fight on the side of the giants. When he returned, he heard the bells ringing. "What is it?" he asked, hurrying to his palace. "The queen has had a baby," replied a courtier, "a baby girl." The king was overjoyed. "We had to call her something while you were away," the courtier went on, "so we gave her the Italian name for nothing, Niente, the Princess Niente." When the king heard those words, he remembered his promise to the dwarf, hid his face in his hands, and groaned. But he told no one his terrible secret. Instead, he went to the queen and kissed her and kissed the baby, who was so beautiful she was like a fairy's child. She had hair as bright as the sun, and was so light she could sit on a flower and not crush it. And, as she grew up, the king and queen noticed how all of the birds and butterflies and bees adored her. For fear of the dwarf, the king made sure she was never called by her real name, but was known to everybody as Princess Nobody. The king at last confided in the queen of the water fairies. "The dwarf must be one of my people if he rides a frog," she told him. "Just send him to me if he is troublesome." Meanwhile, Princess Nobody grew up among the birds and the bees and the flowers in the palace gardens, and could not have been happier. And then, on her 14th birthday, there came a knock at the palace gates. A porter came out to see a dwarf in a red hat and a red cloak, riding a green frog. "Tell the king he is wanted," said the dwarf. When he heard the message, the king came trembling to the door. "I have come for niente," said the dwarf. "You are to go to the queen of the water fairies," replied the king. "She has words to say to you." The dwarf shook his fist at the king. "I'll have niente yet," he said, and bounded off to see the queen of the water fairies. The queen heard the dwarf's tale and flew at once to the king. I can only help you by making the princess vanish away to fairyland, she told him. I have a bird on whose back she can fly. The dwarf will not get her, but you will never see her again, unless a brave prince with a good heart can find where she is hidden. The king and queen sent for the princess, and kissed her and wept over her until the queen of the water fairies placed her on a bluebird's back and flew away with her. After she left, the whole kingdom was plunged into misery. There must be a way of getting her back, said the queen. We must send a prince to find her. But who would go searching for a girl they've never seen, answered the king. Never mind, we can only try, said the queen. And she sent out messengers with pictures of the princess everywhere, and proclaimed that the prince who found her and brought her home would be given half the kingdom. Princes came from all over, intrigued and determined to be the one to find the princess. Together they set out for fairyland. Now, out of all the gallant princes, there was one ugly one, and the rest laughed at him and called him Prince Comical. But he had a kind heart, and as he followed the others through fairyland, he noticed 3 pixies teasing a Daddy Longlegs. They had caught hold of one of his legs and were pulling it as hard as they could. "Go away," cried Prince Comical, running up to them. "Shoo! Shoo!" And the pixies scattered before him. "Thank you," said the Daddy Longlegs. "You have been very kind. Now tell me, is there anything I can do in return?" "Could you help me find Princess Niente?" begged the prince. "I know she's in fairyland, but that is all. You go everywhere. Do you know where she is?" "I don't," replied the Daddy Longlegs, "but I will take you to the Black Beetle. He is the wisest creature in all of fairyland." So saying, the Daddy Longlegs led the prince to the Black Beetle and put the question to him. "She's hidden in the garden beyond," said the beetle. "She is living there now with the Queen of the Water Fairies." "The garden beyond?" repeated Prince Comical. "How do I get there?" "First, you must pass through the mushroom woods, but you will never survive alone. It is a very dangerous place. If you like, I will be your guide." "Thank you," replied the prince, "but first let me tell the other princes. It's only fair I take them with me." "You are a true knight," said the Black Beetle, bowing before him. Once all the princes had been gathered together, they began their journey into the mushroom woods. "Before we go any further," declared the Black Beetle, "I must show you something important." The other princes ignored the beetle, deciding that such a lowly creature could have nothing important to say. But Prince Comical followed the beetle until they came to a large mushroom. "Climb up and look over," said the beetle. So the prince climbed up and peered over, and there he saw a fairy, fast asleep. "Try to wake him," said the beetle. "Just try." But no matter what the prince did, he couldn't wake the fairy. "This is a warning," explained the Black Beetle. "You must never go to sleep under a mushroom in these woods, or you will never wake until Princess Niente is found. I heard it from the Queen of the Water Fairies herself." Then Prince Comical and the Black Beetle went back to find the other princes, and marched through the woods until twilight came upon them. As night spread across the sky, the elves came out for their dance, and one by one the princes joined them. "No," cried Prince Comical, "you can't keep up with the elves. Don't dance with them. You will waste the energy you need for our search." But the other princes ignored him. They danced until midnight, when the elves went to sleep among the branches of the trees, and the princes lay down under the large mushroom. "You can't sleep there," begged Prince Comical. "You'll never wake up." "Nonsense," snapped the other princes. "You may sleep in the open air if you like. We will make ourselves comfortable here." In the morning, Prince Comical woke and called to the other princes, but they didn't answer. He shook them, dragged them, and even pulled their hair, but nothing would wake them. Said a bluebird, watching him. "You have gone to a great deal of effort for your friends. As a reward, I will show you the way to Princess Niente. Climb onto my back." Prince Comical did as he was told, and away they flew for a day and a night to a green bower full of fairies and butterflies. This, Prince Comical realized, was the garden beyond. And there, with her long yellow hair curling around her, sat Princess Niente. And Prince Comical laid his crown at her feet and knelt on one knee and asked the princess to marry him. The princess agreed, knowing only the kindest of hearts could have reached her there. They were married in the church of the elves. Glowworms lit the way, and all of the bells of the flowers pealed in song. Then they journeyed home to the king and queen, not forgetting to wake all the other princes along the way.